So this chapter is actually pretty good because we're seeing a character return that we haven't seen for like over 3 years, I think. But that's like happening at the end, and I'll get to it. But in the beginning, we're seeing the continuation of what I guess I'll call the Metal Knight false flag. And that's because we're led to believe that like this robot invasion that's been happening for the last couple chapters was perpetrated by Metal Knight. And if you follow my channel, you already know what I'm going to say. I don't think it's Metal Knight. I think it's the organization pinning it on him. And, you know, Drive Knight's involved too because he's probably the mad cyborg. But these robots have just been attacking the cities, attacking people, and they're actually going after certain individuals as well. And some more little fun things that I think one is putting out there to further show us that this is a false flag by the organization is Drive Knight like observing the quote-unquote high-end units coming into the city, and he says, I knew they show up. And you're supposed to think like, yeah, he's saying that because he's like, oh, I expected this from the enemy. But I think it's like another double entendre from one here where he's like, he knew they would show up because, you know, he's the one who perpetrated it. Another little funny thing here about these high-end units is that they're supposed to look like they come from Metal Knight, but these idiots put the eyes on wrong. Like, the formation of the eyes are supposed to be upside down, like the singular on the bottom and the two on top, but they have it reversed. And from what I've seen, or at least in my opinion, one likes to do this stuff. Like, just show that the villains or even heroes, or just, I guess, all the characters in general are really incompetent sometimes in like funny ways. And I just think that this is another little display of that from one, while also telling us the truth about everything. But we go through another sequence of like these Neo heroes taking on these robots. We see Excel taking them on along with the Hunters, and he has some success against them, and he's eventually aided by Webby Gaza. But after she like takes down one of the robots, we see her like sweating and looking distraught in this panel to the left. And I think this is showing us that Webby Gaza is probably going to be the first like Manchurian type candidate individual that is activated by the organization here, because she is a cyborg. I think her percentage was like 70% or something. And in my opinion, nearly all of the cyborgification that's going on in the series right now is coming from the organization. You know, aside from what Dr. Kuseno did with Genos or whatever else he did outside of that, and what's implied of Metal Knight as well. I'm sure he has dabbled in cyborgification. If my theory is correct that Drive Knight is Metal Knight's son and that he turned him into a cyborg, aka the mad cyborg, you know, accidentally, but they're pulling the strings on all of these cyborgs essentially. And then eventually they're going to flip a switch and then they're just going to go into goblin mode. And I think that's what we're seeing with Webby Gaza here. Then we see Raiden doing like a Delaware smash type move with wind pressure wave from his palm. I guess that's going to come back. And then we see Blue doing his fist cannon again. And to be honest, I still don't know what to make of this. Like, where is his power set coming from? Because going further into that, we hear him getting some orders once again to come back to headquarters and that you're using too much energy. Like, they're always saying this to Blue, like he's so fragile. Like, you need to save your energy for the greatest enemy. Master Fuzzy is concerned that the enemy is still saving some hidden weapons, which is definitely true. Like, the finale of this fight, or this just sequence right here, is probably going to be like 2 or 3 high dragons coming out, something like that. But in response to that, Blue says, if I retreat now, the power, which is in quotations, I've gained will be meaningless. So what does that mean? Well, I guess on the surface, it means the power that he inherited from Blast, right? Because we're led to believe that Blue is the legitimate son of Blast. I mean, they have the same eyes. But we haven't seen Blast in the webcomic yet, or at least in real time. We've only seen him in that Tatsumaki flashback, and that Ninja Village flashback too. But we haven't seen Blast like we have in the manga. So either Blue got the powers from Blast, whatever Blast is, an Esper, I don't know, something like that. Or he's a straight up cyborg, or he's like a full-blown android, and he's just a puppet of the organization as well. I don't necessarily think that's the case, because we do see his quote-unquote contacts activating in this sequence too. And if he was like an android or a cyborg, he wouldn't need the contacts, you know what I mean? Also, these contacts are for sure coming back into play because they're recording what he can see. And what he did see was Saitama aiding and abetting, you know, the #1 fugitive in the world, a My Mask. And I think that has to come back at some point, right? Then we're coming to Suiryu, and he's doing typical Suiryu stuff. And he fully believes that the Neo Heroes can contain this army of robots, which which I guess in theory they could. They're not really that powerful, but of course it goes back to me saying that we're probably going to see a couple high dragons busted out. But he also says, but there's still something about this that bothers me because, you know, it's a false flag. And that eventually not only the cyborgs will be Manchurian candidated, but also every single person that is wearing a power suit. Like, they will be forced to fight against their will. But we see that he eventually contacts the Hero Association and he's like, hey, you know, just leave the Hero Association out of this. The Neo Heroes are the only ones that can take care of this, and especially keep Suiko out of this, which is obviously him trying to protect his sister, which she catches on to, and she's like, you're underestimating me. And I don't really think he is. Suiko, I think, is at this point accurately rated as an A-class hero. Like, I don't even think she could probably take down a single demon by herself, or I don't know, maybe a weaker one. Who really knows? But she also says in reference to Suiryu that, you know, you think you're the strongest, but you're mistaken, because she obviously knows about Saitama, and she knows that he's the strongest, or at least one of them. I don't think she fully understands the full power of Saitama yet, but we also have to remember that in this continuity, there was no martial arts tournament. Therefore, you know, Suiryu never had his fight with Saitama where he was shown the light. We only got like a sequence in the webcomic where he meets Saitama briefly and more or less just thinks that he's hitting on Suiko, if anything. But anyway, we're coming back to Garo. This is Job Hunter Garo, and we haven't seen him since I think his fight with Suiryu. And it turns out that he left being an Amazon worker to become a construction worker, and that he was, you know, defeating these robots as well. And we see some more come in, and this time it's actually a named robot, a machine god. And he says that Garo is on the kill list and that he's number 14. Like, they're targeting him. Like, they for sure knew about him. And he's like, sir, I have use for your corpse. Sorry for interrupting you on the job, but I'll be taking you away. This is like a polite machine god for some reason. But saying that he has use for his corpse is because, you know, they're trying to turn him into a cyborg. Because we found out that I guess you could just straight up kill somebody, but still turn them into a cyborg. Like the former Neo leaders, Zaditz and Infelsinave, they were killed and then became cyborgs. Or that's the implication. And then there was like those other two, like A-class equivalent Neo hero guys. I think Solitude, and then there was like a boxing type guy. I forget what his name was. I think it was Mars Leo, that was his name. But they're trying to do that to Garo because that would be an extremely powerful cyborg to have on their side. But Garo just, you know, ends him with the quickness, hits him with a water stream. Actually, now that I get a better look at Machine God Magnusauza, whatever his name is, his legs are like very humanoid. So I'm guessing that this Machine God is a cyborg. Maybe that's why he has that distinct personality. If anybody knows who this is, let me know in the comments. Maybe his lower body is a clue to who this originally was. But then Garo's like, I'd love to show you guys how easy it would be if everything in this world could be resolved by just fighting. You worthless hunk of junk that can't even bleed or feel pain. So finally, we're getting an inner monologue on Garo here. We haven't really heard his thoughts or really anything since his fight with Saitama, which was like 7 years ago at this point in the webcomic. And of course, this is in reference to him being defeated by Saitama. And it makes you wonder, like, where is Garo, you know, mentally and morally right now? I mean, obviously he's like protecting these people and he is doing like the whole anti-hero thing for sure, but is there still a little bit of anti-villain in him? I mean, anything's on the table at this point. The webcomic Garo is very different from the manga Garo, but, you know, still similar at their cores, I suppose. And then we're coming into the ending sequence, and we're seeing this little kid with his grandmom trying to escape these robots, and this little kid has like this Stag Beetle Man toy. I guess Stag Beetle Man is like a Kamen Rider or Power Ranger, like a tokusatsu type individual in this world, like a fictional character. I don't think he's an actual hero. And we hear somebody say transform, and suddenly Stag Beetle Man is there. And he says executing justice, and he takes care of the robots with the quickness. And then we see the Bubbly Boys, or now the Neo Bubbly Boys, on a rooftop watching this happen. And they see Stag Beetle Man transform into a silhouetted humanoid. form. So, yeah, this is a My Mask. A My Mask is finally back. Like I said in the beginning, it's been like 3 years since the whole sequence with him being exposed as a monster and Saitama eventually helping him escape, you know, from society, because the whole world saw it. It was on the news. And we also saw Blue witnessing Saitama help a My Mask escape, which if the Hero Association found out, Saitama would be arrested, essentially, right? But anyway, he's back finally and still being a hero, which is great, you know, because we saw that a My Mask didn't have his full character arc. You know, that will probably happen at the end of the series or towards the end, but he had a huge development in his character and he is more heroic than he's ever been at this point, I suppose. Still mentally unstable, of course. He is a monster after all, but he's working on it. But the most interesting thing here is that he has like full-blown mimicry powers, which we didn't know before. We knew that he could, of course, go between his hideous monster form and his, you know, beautiful idol form. But now we see that he could just almost become anything. I mean, I don't know if he could become like a toaster or something, but maybe anything that's like humanoid he can transform into, which is really cool. I don't think we've seen somebody with this power yet. I mean, we saw that one fodder monster in the manga's continuity that King ran into, and just like it witnessing King caused it to like accidentally kill itself. But that's about it, right? But what I think of My Mask is doing is just obviously a better version of that. But this is really cool, and I wonder where this is going to go. Like, one clearly has a purpose for this, because I think My Mask is one of one's like favorite characters, and I think he is very important to this series. I mean, obviously he is, but I think even in the future for sure. And I wonder how far this is going to go. But as for him encountering the Neo Bubbly Boys here, I think it would be too straightforward if he just destroys them, because, you know, he has history with them. Going back to chapter 97, when we were first introduced to these guys, My Mask was like very dismissive of them because they were at the quote-unquote handsome castle major talent company. And like, I guess there's like a My Mask's manager or something trying to show a My Mask like, hey, you know, we got these bubbly boys. They're going to be like the BTS of the Hero Association. And My Mask was just like, nah, I don't care. They're not beautiful. You know, get them out of here. Because he was like super obsessed with Saitama at that time, and he only saw beauty in him. And of course, they resented him because of that. But the ending of their sequence was like them kind of getting tough with a My Mask. And he was like, you know, what would you do if I was a monster? If one appeared in front of you like this? And they were like, we'd beat you to a pulp at 7-on-1. And then he like intimidated them with the veiny neck stuff. But now we're going to see it. And like I said, if he just beats them down, I don't know if that's the best course of action here. I would like it if he like talk no jutsus them. I mean, maybe he'll fight them a little bit, but just squashing them doesn't really do much. You know what I mean? This is like one of the few times where I actually would like a talk no jutsu in these series. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this one, guys. I'll see you again in another couple months whenever one decides to upload another chapter. But let me know what you think about it in the comments. And if you liked the video, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.